I didn't even hear the door creak open. I was half asleep, barely clinging to the edge of dreams, when I felt the change in the room, like the air got heavier. Then I felt his presence, Lorenzo Moretti, my boss. The man who terrified half the city. The man who paid me in cash, always crisp and exact, and never once asked me how I was doing. The father of the little girl lying in my arms, breathing softly against my chest. I didn't move at first. I thought maybe I was dreaming, but then I felt his stare. You don't forget the feeling of being watched by a man like him. It's sharp, like a knife pressed against your spine, even when he's not angry. Carefully, I shifted Bella's little arm off me and slid out of bed, making sure not to wake her. She sighed in her sleep, and that sound alone made my chest ache. I always hated seeing her wait for him, eyes half closed, holding her drawing books like she believed he might show up and ask to see them. He never did. Until now. I stood, smoothing my dress, still barefoot from earlier. "I'm sorry, sir," I whispered. My voice felt too loud in the soft quiet of the room. I didn't know what I was apologizing for. Holding her? Comforting the child he left alone for hours? Being where he should have been? He didn't speak. Just stared. His face wasn't angry. It was worse than that. He looked broken. I had never seen Lorenzo Moretti like that. Not at the kitchen table during one of his silent meals. Not during the nights when I passed him coming in, reeking of smoke and something darker. But tonight, in the dim light of his daughter's room, he didn't look like a mafia boss. He looked like a man who had just realized he was losing something he never bothered to protect. "I didn't mean to fall asleep," I added, softer this time, trying to explain. "She had a nightmare. She kept crying for you, but I didn't know if you were coming back. So I stayed." He closed his eyes for a second, just a second. And when he opened them again, they weren't cold anymore. They were tired. And something else. Something hollow. "I didn't know she had nightmares," he said, barely above a whisper. I swallowed. "She always does. Around this time of year," his jaw clenched. I knew why. Bella's mother died this week, 3 years ago. No one talks about it in this house. Not even him. But Bella remembers. She remembers in her sleep, in the way she won't let go of me at night, in the way she waits on the stairs long after her bedtime, hoping maybe he'll kiss her goodnight. Lorenzo stepped toward the bed and looked down at his daughter. His hand hovered in the air like he wanted to touch her cheek but wasn't sure if he had the right. "She loves you," I said quietly. "She just doesn't know how to ask you to stay." He finally looked at me. Really looked at me like he saw me for the first time. Not as the maid, not as the help, but as someone who had taken care of what he'd neglected. I thought he might tell me to get out, fire me, shout, but instead, he asked something I never expected. "Do you stay with her every night?" I nodded. "Only when she asks." He didn't say anything else. He just sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, like the weight of everything he'd ignored had finally collapsed onto his shoulders. I didn't know whether to stay or go, so I stood there, heart pounding, watching a man fall apart without making a sound. And in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was sorry for him. The silence stretched, heavy and fragile. And then, so softly I barely heard him, he said, "She shouldn't have to ask." I didn't know how to answer that. So I didn't. I just sat down on the floor beside the bed, pulled my knees to my chest, and stayed. For her, for him. For the mess of love and absence tangled in that room. For the first time since I started working there, I saw Lorenzo Moretti not as a monster, but as a man who didn't know how to be a father. And maybe that was the saddest thing of all. The next morning came slow and heavy, like fog rolling in after a storm. I woke up before the sun, my neck stiff from sleeping on the floor. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I saw her, Bella, still curled up, her little hand now holding the edge of her father's sleeve. He had stayed. Lorenzo Moretti, the man known across cities for being cold and heartless, had fallen asleep sitting up on the edge of his daughter's bed. His head tilted back against the wall, his face tired, but peaceful in a way I had never seen. Like maybe, for one night, he found something softer to hold onto than his empire of fear. I didn't wake them. I slipped out quietly, my feet cold against the marble floor. The silence of the mansion felt different that morning. Less haunted, maybe. Still lonely. But something small had shifted, and like a door left slightly open. Downstairs, I started on breakfast. Maria, the head cook, hadn't arrived yet. She was always late on Mondays. I didn't mind. It was easier to keep my thoughts quiet when I was alone with the sound of eggs sizzling and toast popping up. I was pouring juice when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting to see Bella with her usual bedhead and sleepy eyes. But it wasn't her. It was him. Lorenzo stood there in his usual black, but something about him looked undone. His tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the top. But it was his eyes that caught me, like they were softer, not sharp like before. "You didn't have to sleep on the floor," he said, voice low and quiet. I shrugged, unsure what to say. "Didn't want to leave her alone?" He nodded, looking at the counter like it held answers. There was a long pause. One of those awkward silences where you don't know if you should talk or just disappear. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For being there for her?" It took me a second to respond. "She's just a little girl. She needs someone." His eyes flickered to mine. "And I haven't been." I didn't know if he wanted me to lie, to tell him he was trying, that he was doing his best. But I wasn't going to pretend. "No, you haven't." He took a step closer. "You hate me, don't you?" I blinked. That wasn't what I expected him to say. "I don't hate you," I said slowly. "But I hate what she feels when you're not around." That hit him. I saw it. The way his jaw tightened, the way his hands curled slightly at his sides. But he didn't defend himself. He didn't bark orders or walk out like usual. He just stood there. "I was afraid," he said finally, almost to himself. "Afraid that loving her would make me weak. That I'd lose control." I stared at him, stunned. "She's your daughter, not your enemy." "I know that now." He rubbed the back of his neck. "But I built my whole life on control, and she undoes me." That was the first honest thing I ever heard come out of his mouth. And for a moment, I saw him not as a boss, not as a monster in a suit, but as a man. A man who'd lost too much too early and never learned how to heal. "She doesn't want perfection," I said. "She just wants her father." He nodded, eyes distant. Then looked at me again. "Why do you stay, Emily?" I froze. No one in this house ever called me by name. "Not the guards. Not the maids? Not him." "I don't know," I said honestly. At first it was just a job, then she made it feel like something more. She loves you. I love her too. There it was. No use hiding it. I wasn't just the maid. I was the one who kissed her scraped knees, who listened to her cry for her mother in the dark, who told her bedtime stories when the house was too cold and too quiet. "She called you Mama once," he said, voice breaking a little. I felt my throat tighten. I remembered that night. She'd fallen asleep in my lap and whispered it, barely awake. I didn't correct her. I didn't have the heart. "I'm sorry if..." "Don't apologize," he cut in gently. "I wasn't there. You were." And for the first time since I met Lorenzo Moretti, I saw tears in his eyes. He turned away before they could fall, but the damage was already done. A crack had split open and the man behind the name was finally bleeding through. "I want to do better," he said. "But I don't know how." I looked at him for a long time. Then I walked over, picked up a second plate, and handed it to him. "Start with breakfast." And handed it to him. "Start with breakfast." He took the plate from my hands like it was something sacred. Maybe it was. Maybe for him, this simple act, sharing a quiet breakfast in his own kitchen with someone who wasn't afraid to tell him the truth, was more foreign than all the violence he'd lived through. We didn't say much after that. I slid 2 slices of toast onto his plate and poured him coffee. He took it black, no sugar, just like I figured. He sat down at the long marble island while I stood across from him, leaning against the sink, watching the steam curl from his cup. After a few bites, he looked up at me again. "You cook better than Maria." I let out a short laugh. "Don't let her hear you say that. She's still mad at me for touching her spices last week." His mouth twitched into something like a smile. It didn't quite reach his eyes, but it was real. Raw, unpolished, and human. A rare sight. And then, as if on cue, the sound of tiny footsteps echoed from the stairs. We both turned just as Bella came into the kitchen, wearing her mismatched socks and carrying that worn-out teddy bear she took everywhere. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, unsure, like she didn't trust her eyes. Lorenzo stood up slowly, unsure too, unsure if she'd run to him or turn away. But she just stood there, blinking, processing the fact that he was actually here in the morning. Something he hadn't been in. Maybe months. Maybe more. I held my breath. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around his leg. He looked down at her, frozen again. That towering, dangerous man stopped, cold by a 6-year-old girl with bed hair and a stuffed bear. I had another bad dream, she mumbled against his pants. I know, he said, voice cracking. He dropped to one knee and hugged her. I'm sorry, Bellissima. I should have been here. She didn't say anything. She just buried her face in his chest. And that was it. Forgiveness. Not the kind people begged for, not the kind written in blood and violence, but the kind only a child could give. I looked away. The moment felt too intimate, like I was seeing something I wasn't supposed to. Lorenzo lifted her in his arms and walked her over to the stool beside him. Want some breakfast? Only if Emmy makes it, she said with a sleepy grin. He looked at me, and there was something unspoken in his eyes. Grateful, yes, but also guilty. Like he knew he didn't deserve this. Not her, not me. Not the fragile peace that was blooming quietly in that cold kitchen. I walked over and ruffled Bella's hair. Coming right up. As I turned back to the stove, I heard her whisper, Daddy, are you staying today? He hesitated. I could feel the weight of that pause behind me like a storm. Yes, he finally said. I'm not going anywhere. And for once, I believed him. The rest of the morning was quiet. No guards interrupting, no phone calls, no orders barked into the air. Just the sound of forks clinking, juice being poured, and a little girl laughing when her toast popped out too fast. When I looked over at him again, he was staring at us, not like a man watching from a distance, but like someone trying to memorize every second. Trying to hold on to something he knew he'd almost lost. After breakfast, I took Bella upstairs to change, and when I came back down, he was still there, still sitting, still thinking. Can I ask you something? I said softly. He nodded. Why now? He didn't look up, just stared at the floor, like the words were buried somewhere deep. Because last night, he finally said, I saw my daughter fall asleep in your arms and realized I was already gone in her eyes. I was just a name, a ghost in a suit, and I couldn't take that. I couldn't let her love you more than she loved me. I froze. His honesty hit hard, raw, exposed, maybe even cruel. I didn't mean to take your place, I said. You didn't. You filled the one I abandoned. And then he stood, walked over to me, and for the first time ever, his voice wasn't distant. It was quiet. Close. I don't know what this is between us, he said. But I know I owe you more than I'll ever be able to repay. I stared at him, heart pounding, caught somewhere between pain and something I didn't want to name yet. I didn't do this for you, I whispered. I did it for her. He nodded, slowly. But now, he added, voice trembling just enough to be real, I want to do it for both of you. The air between us was still, thick with something neither of us wanted to name. I stood there, unsure if I should speak, unsure if I even wanted to hear more, because a part of me had learned to live in silence, in the small corners of this house, in the space between her laughter and his absence. But then he said it again, softer this time. For both of you. I didn't reply, not right away. I turned back toward the sink, hands gripping the edge of the counter. I felt the sting in my chest before I understood it, because that wasn't just a promise. It was a confession. And I wasn't ready for it. How do you believe a man like Lorenzo Moretti, a man who made people disappear, a man whose name was whispered in courtrooms and behind locked doors, a man who once walked past his daughter's tears like they were background noise? You don't just forget all of that because he suddenly learned how to say, I'm sorry, but you feel it, and it hurts. He didn't say another word as he walked out, just left quietly the way he used to. Only this time it wasn't cold. It was something else. something uncertain, something that made my skin burn where he had stood close to me. I didn't see him again until late that evening. Bella had fallen asleep on the couch with her blanket and cartoons still playing in the background. I sat next to her, head leaned back, eyes half closed when I heard the front door open. I tensed, not because I was afraid, not anymore, but because I didn't want this day to break. Lorenzo stepped in, coat in hand, no bodyguards behind him. He looked tired, older, but something in his eyes was different. There was a softness he didn't try to hide anymore. "She waited for you again," I said, not looking up. "I know." He placed the coat on the rack. "But this time I wasn't late for work. I was late for flowers." I looked at him then. He held a single white rose in his hand. "For her mother," he said quietly. "I went to her grave." I blinked. "You haven't gone in years." "I know." He walked over, knelt down by the couch, and gently brushed Bella's hair from her face. She stirred, but didn't wake. Just sighed, like she knew he was there and that was enough. "I told her I failed," he said, "that I didn't know how to raise our daughter without her." My throat tightened. "But I also told her about you," he added, eyes still on Bella. "That a stranger walked into this house and gave our little girl back everything I took from her." His voice broke on the last word. I looked away again, swallowing hard. "She's not mine," I whispered. "She might not be by blood," he replied, "but she is by love. And sometimes that's the only thing that matters." It wasn't fair, really. How easily he could say things that made the walls inside me tremble. For so long, I had built my life in the shadow of his, living through Bella, surviving one quiet heartbreak after another, telling myself I was just the maid, just the caretaker, just passing through. But now he was looking at me like I wasn't just anything. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said, standing slowly. "But I'm asking you not to give up on me." I looked at Bella again, her small hand curled around her teddy bear, her chest rising and falling peacefully. And then I looked at him, at Lorenzo Moretti, the Mafia boss, the feared, the untouchable, standing vulnerable in his own home. "I haven't given up," I said finally, "but I don't know if I can trust you." He nodded. "Then let me earn it. Not with words, with time." I didn't answer, just walked past him to get a blanket and covered Bella carefully. My hands brushed against his by accident, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Not because it was romantic, but because it was real. And that, I realized, was more dangerous than any gun he'd ever held. The next few days passed like walking on thin ice. Careful steps, shallow breaths, no sudden movements that could crack the fragile peace that had settled over the house. Lorenzo tried. That much was obvious. He was there in the mornings now. He started reading to Bella at night, awkwardly, stiff at first, like a soldier holding a baby for the first time. But she didn't care. She giggled when he stumbled over the voices and beamed when he kissed her forehead. All she'd ever wanted was him, showing up, and I was still there, in the background where I was used to being. But something was changing, not just in him, but in me. I wasn't prepared for how hard it would be. One evening, I came downstairs to grab a glass of water and found him sitting alone on the balcony, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, untouched. He didn't look up when I stepped out, just kept staring into the night, the city lights flickering below us. "You always watch the skyline like it's about to give you answers," I said gently. He cracked a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I used to think being above the city meant I'd won." "And now?" He turned toward me, tired and honest. "Now I wonder how much I lost just to sit up here alone." I walked over, leaned against the railing beside him. The silence stretched again, not awkward, just heavy with the things we weren't ready to say out loud. "I had to make hard choices," he murmured. "You don't get to survive in my world if you hesitate." I nodded slowly. "But Bella isn't your world. She's your home." His throat moved as he swallowed hard. He took a sip of his drink, then set it down. "And you?" I looked at him, the question hanging between us like a thread pulled too tight. "I don't know what I am," I admitted. "I came here to clean floors, not fix hearts." His gaze was too direct. Too raw, but you did, he said. You fixed hers. And maybe mine. I looked away, chest burning. Don't say that. Don't make this more complicated. I'm not trying to make it complicated, Emily, he said quietly. But I can't pretend anymore. You've been the mother she needed. The warmth this house forgot, and I feel things when I look at you that scare the hell out of me. My breath caught. I wasn't stupid. I'd felt the pull between us for months, even when I tried to bury it. In the way he softened when I spoke. In the way he lingered in the kitchen just to hear Bella laugh. In the way he looked at me now, like I wasn't just part of his house, but a piece of his broken soul that he desperately wanted to hold on to. I don't want to ruin what's left, I whispered. She's happy now. And I shook my head. If we mess this up, she'll pay for it. He stepped closer, slowly, cautiously, like he knew how close I was to walking away. I'm not asking for anything now, he said. I just need you to know. I care for you. More than I should. And not just because of what you've done for her. I looked at him then. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw the man Lorenzo could have been, should have been, if his life had taken a different road. He didn't kiss me. He didn't even touch me. He just stood there, honest and exposed in a way no one had ever seen him. And somehow, that was worse than any kiss, because it meant this wasn't just a passing moment. This wasn't a fantasy or a fling wrapped in trauma. It was real, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to feel it. The next morning, I woke up feeling like the house was holding its breath. There was no yelling, no rushed footsteps, no slammed doors. Just the quiet hum of early sunlight creeping through the curtains and the faint clinking of dishes in the kitchen. When I came downstairs, I found Bella already up, seated at the dining table in her pajamas, hair tangled, eyes bright. And next to her, Lorenzo. He was pouring milk into her cereal with a shaky sort of smile, like he was trying too hard to get it right. Too much? He asked her. No, Bella said, shaking her head. Just right. He glanced at me as I entered, and for a moment, that softness returned to his eyes. But it wasn't hungry or intense like before. It was careful, like he didn't want to scare me away. Morning, he said quietly. Morning. Bella waved her spoon at me. Daddy's making breakfast.
Is that so?
I smiled as I walked over. Looks like you're doing a great job, boss. He chuckled under his breath but didn't correct me. I made my way to the counter, grabbed a mug, and poured myself some coffee. My hands still shook a little. Not from fear, from everything else. From the way he looked at me last night. From the way my chest had tightened when he said he cared. I was in trouble. And I knew it. This wasn't just about Bella anymore. After breakfast, Lorenzo asked if he could take Bella to the park, just the two of them. My first instinct was to say no. Not because I didn't trust him, but because, well, maybe I didn't. Not fully, not yet. But Bella lit up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. She ran upstairs to change, shouting about the swings. I'll keep her safe, he said quietly as she disappeared up the stairs. I know, I whispered, avoiding his eyes. She trusts you, but you don't. I met his gaze then. It's not about trust. It's about time. Trust takes more than a few apologies and bedtime stories. He nodded. Then I'll keep showing up. And he did. For the next few weeks, he showed up every day. Picked Bella up from school. Ate dinner with us. Took her to the zoo, to piano lessons, to the movies. He asked about her drawings. Helped her with her homework. He even sat through her endless bedtime stories without once checking his phone. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments where he disappeared into his study, doors locked, whispers over the phone in that low, dangerous voice. The Mafia never left the room entirely. It just waited in the corners. But it was quieter now. Distant. One night, after Bella had gone to bed, I sat out on the back patio, wrapped in a blanket, staring up at the stars. Lorenzo joined me, silent at first. He handed me a glass of wine and sat down in the chair beside mine. Do you ever think about leaving? I asked suddenly, surprising even myself. He didn't answer right away. Every damn day. Then why don't you? He sighed, leaned back, and stared into the night. Because the moment I try, someone reminds me what I've done. What I owe. What I can never walk away from. And Bella? He closed his eyes. She's the only thing that makes me believe I'm not completely lost. I swallowed hard, the wine burning down my throat. And what about me? That question hung in the air like a blade. He turned toward me slowly. You're the one who showed me how far I'd already fallen. And somehow, you didn't walk away. I didn't speak. I couldn't, because that was the truth, wasn't it? I should have walked. The moment I saw the blood on his hands, the rage in his eyes, the fear in his silence. But I didn't, and maybe that said more about me than it did about him. He stood then, walked over to me, and crouched down beside my chair. His fingers didn't touch mine, but they hovered, close enough to make my skin ache. Tell me what you want, Emily, he said softly. Not from Bella, from me. I turned to him, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. I want to stop waiting for the next heartbreak. He reached for my hand slowly. And this time, I let him. Then I'll give you a reason to believe I won't be the one to break it. Give you a reason to believe I won't be the one to break it. After that night, nothing was said out loud. No confessions. No promises. Just small moments, hands brushing, glances that lasted a little too long. Quiet smiles when we thought Bella wasn't looking. But I could feel it happening. Something deep and dangerous was blooming between us. It wasn't fireworks or fairy tales. It was slower, heavier. Like roots pushing their way through the cracks of a ruined house, rebuilding something that was never meant to grow. And I hated how much I wanted it, because this was still him, Lorenzo Moretti. The man who made enemies vanish. The man with a past soaked in fear. The man who now read bedtime stories in the same voice he once used to give kill orders. What scared me most wasn't who he had been. It was who he was becoming, and how much of my heart was starting to believe in him. One evening, Bella had a fever. She was weak, sweaty, and too tired to speak, her eyes half shut as I laid cool cloths on her forehead. I stayed by her side the whole night. So did he. We didn't speak much. He just sat at the edge of the bed, his hand resting gently on her back as she slept. I hate seeing her like this, he whispered. She'll be okay, I said, though I was scared too. She just needs rest. Flu's been going around. She used to cry for her mother when she was sick, he said quietly. The first year after it happened, she wouldn't even look at me. She thought I'd leave her too. I didn't know what to say. My heart ached just hearing it. I blamed her, he admitted. For surviving. That makes me a monster, doesn't it? I looked at him sharply. No, it makes you human. Broken, but human. He finally looked at me. And you? You're not broken? I gave him a weak smile. I've just gotten good at hiding the cracks. For a long while, we sat in silence again. The kind of silence that feels like it's saying everything. When Bella's breathing calmed and she finally slipped into deeper sleep, I stood to get more water. But Lorenzo grabbed my wrist gently. Not rough, not commanding. Just careful, stay, he said. Please. So I stayed. He didn't let go of my hand. And I didn't ask him to. We sat there on the floor beside her bed, hands entwined, our shoulders touching. There was no kiss, no wild confessions, just warmth. Just the beginning of something we were both too afraid to name. That night, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit until now. This wasn't just about Bella anymore. It was about us. About a man who'd destroyed everything he loved, and a woman who had nothing left to lose. About the space between hate and healing. About love, not the kind that sweeps you off your feet, but the kind that makes you stay. Even when you're afraid. Especially when you're afraid. The next morning, I woke up with my head resting on his shoulder, his jacket draped over both of us. Bella was still sleeping peacefully, and for once the house didn't feel cold. It felt like home. The final part came quietly. No grand gestures. No explosions. Just life. Slow, heavy, real. Bella got better after a few days, and the house returned to its soft rhythm. Breakfast together. Bedtime stories. Her drawings all over the fridge like little trophies of a world we were trying to fix. But inside me, the storm hadn't passed. I felt it building, that pressure in my chest. A truth I couldn't avoid because no matter how much I loved Bella, no matter how deeply Lorenzo looked at me now, no matter how real this peace felt, it was still borrowed. I knew what world he came from. I knew the blood that paid for this house, the men who waited outside in black cars, the whispers that never quite faded. I knew that someday someone would come knocking. And it wouldn't be for dinner, and when that happened, I wouldn't be enough to protect her. One night, while Bella was asleep upstairs and the guards were scattered outside playing cards and pretending not to watch me, I walked into Lorenzo's study. He was behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, reading files that probably had names no one would dare speak twice. He looked up when he saw me. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. He stood immediately. "What is it?" "Bella." "She's fine." I stepped closer, my voice barely holding. "It's me." He stopped. "Emily, what's wrong?" I looked him in the eye, and God, it hurt. "I can't stay," I whispered. His face didn't move at first. Just froze. Like his body had heard it, but his heart was refusing to. "You're leaving?" He said slowly. I nodded. "I have to." He walked around the desk, his steps slow, calculated, but his voice cracked under the weight. "Why now?" "Because I love her too much to let her get hurt when your world comes crashing through that door." His jaw clenched. I know what you told me," I said. "And I believe you. But belief doesn't stop bullets. It doesn't erase blood. And it won't keep her safe when someone comes looking for revenge." He stood there, helpless. The most powerful man I'd ever known, brought to his knees without even being touched. "You said I gave her what you couldn't," I said. "Now give her what I can't. A life, a future. A father who's present, not haunted." His voice broke. "You're asking me to lose both of you." "No," I whispered. "I'm asking you to be worthy of us." He reached out like he was going to pull me in, like he might beg. But he didn't. Instead, he nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere quiet," I said. "Somewhere I won't have to flinch when I hear tires on gravel." He tried to smile, but it didn't land. "You'll write to her?" "Only if you let her write back." That made him laugh, a low, broken sound that felt more like crying. He walked me to the door. Didn't try to stop me, didn't beg, just stood there in silence. While I walked away, Bella didn't wake up when I slipped into her room one last time. I kissed her forehead, tucked her in tight, and whispered into her ear, "I'll always be near. Even if you can't see me." And then I left. No goodbye. Not out loud. Just the quiet closing of a door behind me. 3 months later. The letter came in a white envelope, no return address. It was written in pencil. Messy, shaky, sweet. "Dear Emmy, Daddy makes pancakes now. Not as good as yours, but he tries. He reads me stories every night. I think he misses you." "I do too, but guess what? I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. Love, Bella." And tucked inside the letter was a single white rose. Not from her, from him. I held it close, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. Because maybe I'd left the house. But I never really left them, and some love stories don't end with staying. Some end with walking away, so that the ones you love can finally grow in the light.